Thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, we are here ready for the second semi-final, and this is going to decide who is going to face RDU in the grand finals of the day. And this is as the guys were saying, pretty crazy matchup. Sort of, as Sottle said, the battle of the Wonder Kids to a certain extent. Both relatively young players, but both performing extremely well. And we can see there the bands have just popped up, and it's going to be Pavel's Warrior ban. Not too much of a surprise overall, but the Rogue ban from Georgec. What do you make of this?
That makes a lot of sense with Pavel's lineup having so many, slow control decks. Just getting that Rogue out of the way. It's a deck that typically, farms slow control decks. Makes a lot of sense for the lineup.
Yeah, and this is what happens when you build your lineup in a slightly different style than just bringing the most solid sort of general ladder decks. When you build it in a very sort of control-heavy style like Pavel's done, it means that your ban strategies are normally very different as opposed to the usual ban shaming out. But we are getting into the first game. It's going to be Georgec on the Hunter versus Pavel on the Druid.
Yeah, typically speaking, Druid's going to have an edge in this matchup. They're just really good at controlling the board. They have such great removal to stop Hunter's threats and can oftentimes get ahead on the board early, ramping the mana. It used to be kind of scary because of the power level of High Main and the power level of Call of the Wild on 8, but now Call of the Wild doesn't come out until 9, and High Main it usually isn't too big of a deal just because you can oftentimes establish a big enough board as Druid or ramp ahead enough in mana with things like Wild Growth and Nourish in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, I think one of the big differences as well is in the matchup, as the Hunter at least, I used to be happy with putting on early pressure, then guarantee some burn to end the game. But with players bringing Feral Rage or double Feral Rage and then Moonglade Portal or things from Raven Idols as well, suddenly you can't really rely on that strategy because they just boost themselves back out of range, and with no board after that, there's just not a lot you can do as the Hunter. Even a Call of the Wild won't be enough. And
taunts can oftentimes get in the way. We see a little bit of a different kind of strategy for Pavel here. He doesn't have Ancient of Wars in his deck, and he instead has Dark Arakoa. So a little bit more flexible of a taunt, can come down a little bit earlier, and maybe can come down with other minions on the board to avoid deadly shot situations. And it's not as big of an investment into deadly shot.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all, just getting that taunt out a little bit earlier. But you gotta see Pavel just start to do the usual, the grand plan for the Druid here is stop Hunter hitting you in the face and really reduce the board down. Yeah, and as you said, going into the Nourish next turn, he has 2 Azure Drakes and the second Wrath to be able to just deal with anything that comes out here. So I feel like Pavel's in a really strong position, although with double Houndmaster, Georgec's going to really want to hope this Fiery Bat lives.
Yeah, you may even consider just not even playing it. We see him thinking about it here, picking it up, putting it back down, kind of signaling to Pavel that he's thinking about something. So Pavel could kind of make a read on this once he sees if it comes out, if it is a Fiery Bat, maybe Georgec has a Houndmaster in his hand, kind of giving that away a little bit. And yeah, that kind of hesitation can really cost you in some of these situations because he's thinking about saving it for next turn where he can play Fiery Bat and Houndmaster at the same time to try to guarantee the buff. And he doesn't end up just playing it out there. Turn 5 is a very populated turn from Druid. They have things like Nourish and Azure Drake and sometimes even Druid of the Claw. We know in Pavel's deck right now, just Nourish and Azure Drake on that slot, but still 4 cards on that slot. I would really like to see Pavel go with Nourish for crystals here and just, cycle the Wrath on the Fiery Bat or use a Hero Power on the Fiery Bat to get rid of it. Georgec kind of gave away some information there with that hesitation and the picking it up and putting it back down. And with 2 Azure Drakes in your hand, you have the ability to kind of reload after the fact. So it's just so powerful to get the crystals and start pushing out that early mana lead.
Yeah, and if you can get ahead whilst keeping the Hunter board relatively low, which is, he's done a really good job. He's only on 26, that, well, 25 after the bat, of course, but, after, going into turn 4, only being on 25 and only having the Squire on the board, you're feeling pretty good as the Druid when you're moving up into an 8-mana turn to follow up. And now, with that Wolf coming down, he has the opportunity to just Wrath into Swipe if he really wants to clear it up, and then just force the reduction down onto the board state for Georgec. But he also just has the Drake to actually just put a minion on the board and just start battling for it in a a minion fight as opposed to just using up all the resources from the spells.
Yeah, he still has to be conscious about that Houndmaster. Definitely is something in the back of his mind, the threat of it for sure, and may see him react to it here with maybe a Living Roots on the Infested Wolf and a Hero Power down one of the 1/1s. Or you may see him just ignore it, I guess, and
yeah, I think he's just going to take his time because one of the benefits he does have next turn is the second Azure Drake into Swipe, which is going to be able to deal with the at least the Houndmastered Wolf if it comes to it. But also even Houndmaster on this turn isn't too great for George in terms of just the Hunter playing towards its mana curve, right? It's,
I mean,
it's
he's got
slightly
the
off
coin,
and it
so
slows him
you
down.
can fill it up with the Knife Juggler here. So he can
That's
go
true.
Knife Juggler, Coin Houndmaster, take the value trade, so it sets himself in a little bit better position against Swipe. But then Pavel's going to be able to react with, Swipe plus Wrath plus Hero Power and be totally fine with that. Pump up actually a really big Yogg if he wants it to as well. And, it still just has card draw to refill his hand. The Wrath will be drawing a card that turn. The Azure Drake can also draw a card. So just so much cycle, so much removal, and just being 4 mana ahead of your opponent.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
insane.
nuts. Yeah, it's just Druid can get off to these disgusting starts, and they oftentimes win against other mid-range decks simply because they have more mana and better removal than some of the other
They can
mid-range
just
decks.
do more stuff than you can most turns. So we're going to see the trade go into there, try and get the juggle.
This is an interesting play by Georgec to try and help himself play around those sort of swipe scenarios. Now he's got more minions at staggered health totals. If he would have just, Houndmastered up the Infested Wolf, it would have been left at 1 health, making him extremely vulnerable to swipe plus Hero Power or swipe plus Wrath. But in this way, he's able to kind of avoid a lot of the potential swipe scenarios. It's a really good play.
Yeah, and Pavel's in a position where he can still do a really good job of clearing most of the board out at least.
Yeah.
And, as you mentioned, he does have the backup plan of, because he's just used so many spells already, the worst case scenario, if he really needs something wacky to happen, he could just drop Yogg and then just hope for the best. So a really good backup plan for him at least. But with the Fandral Staghelm, probably the most singular powerful card in the Druid deck for the potential it can have, is it's going to be drawn, so it's given a few more options in terms of using the Wrath and the Living Roots to clear up some of the board, and then holding on to a Georgec Swipe.
I think you might want to be considering holding on to Georgec Swipe simply because Georgec is going into the 6 mana turn, and your
what
biggest
happens
fear
on 6 mana against Hunter Fiber?
it's the high main turn, so you really want to have something left in play after the fact. So Pavel, his mindset right now isn't how do I clear the board the best, because he had full clear options. His mindset is how do I make sure my opponent cannot play Savannah high main, and that's why he set up this awkward situation for Georgec where if Georgec has a removal spell, it's really great for him. He's able to kind of clear off the Azure Drake and keep on trucking, but that means he is unable to play Savannah high main, and that's priority number 1 for Pavel, since he doesn't have a great toolkit for answering it at the moment, is just make sure Georgec has to use a removal spell. Even if he gets a little bit of value out of the removal spell, you don't care. You have your advantage that can start snowballing. You just need to delay Savannah high main for just 1 more turn so you can really get your footing back on the board.
Yeah, and now he does have the option of just going Animal Companion Kill Command if he really wants. I feel like because the board isn't really flooded at all on Pavel's side, that Deadly Shot is very valuable to take down, say, an Arakoa, for example. So I really like this. See what the Animal Companion is first, because if it is a Huffer or Leark, he could actually just choose to hold on to the Kill Command and use the minion to trade.
Yeah, the one reason I really like using the minion to trade is you get so much value out of it, right? Like, Pavel has so much extra mana to be able to utilize his hero power, but Georgec is going to disagree here and just go in, push a little extra damage this way, and be really aggressive.
If he has to hero power it, right, it's an additional 4 damage, or 3 because you gain the armor anyway. So I don't mind that play at all from George, using the kill command to just keep the minion on the board. Do see Fandral come down now, and that sweet, sweet Wrath value, clearing up the Leok with no problems whatsoever, as well as drawing a card.
Yeah, and
pretty strong turn when the Hunter's on 2 cards.
Yeah, now Pavel secured a very large board. So even if there was a high main from Georgec's side, you can see how delaying it for a turn allows Pavel to set up for the ability to answer it the following turn, because he's able to milk his mana advantage for just another turn, which allows him to get just that much far ahead on the board.
Is this just a prep for Yogg? He just innovated out hero power. Now, why would you do that if you weren't going to Yogg? Because it's not under really any health threat for a start, and also excuse me, it's not turn 9, so it's not like he's wants all the health or wants to just weave in extra damage to set up lethal or avoid the Call the Wild shenanigans.
I think it is mainly for Yogg. The Innervate's not doing a lot in his hand right now, and being able to hero power every turn could be extremely relevant. Being able to push a little bit of extra damage, being able to gain a little bit of extra life. He saw Georgec go for that kill command play on his Azure Drake to push damage with a 4-1, which is extremely aggressive. Like, it's a very aggressive line of play. It uses resources pretty frivolously, and Pavel's most likely reading into that, being like, all right, my opponent's got damage in his hand. He's setting up for something evil here. So yeah, that's why he's kind of evil. That's why he's kind of like
he's evil because he wants to win the game.
Yeah, that's why he's kind of like taking that extra defensive line, innovating out the hero power, I believe. Georgec has a curve here. He can fill out his hand with the Unleash the Hounds plus the Houndmaster, and
I think he almost has to, because otherwise the Houndmaster is very, very dead in hand after.
Yeah.
You know, the odds when you continue to draw beasts that you can get value from is quite low. We're going to see the trade by the looks of things. Just going to a quick value trade there, taking down the 2/2, leaving the dog alive as a taunt as well. And he's already seen a Wrath. We've seen 2 Wrath swipes. We've seen a lot of like the easy removal for this. But there's going to be a Living Hooks with Fandral, so it's going to spawn 2 of the saplings. And look, this is just the power of Fandral living, basically.
Yeah, it's
so many cards you're going to draw are going to get the double value, and that's, oh, I'll just kill off that, spawn 2 1/1s, 4 attack, 8 armor, and just keep going. And as you said, this is just continuing to fuel Yogg if he even needs it.
Yeah, at the moment he really doesn't need it, but he's going to have it ready in hand just in case Call of the Wild comes out. That's really the big trigger for it. And, you know, Fiery Bat, not the card you want to draw here. It's
just going for the deadly shot to kill Fandral.
Yeah, and desperation plays here. He's able to take out the 3/2, which removes just as much attack power off the board as removing Fandral would. Only 6 cards remaining, 5 cards remaining in the deck, but even combo with Fandral.
Yeah, this just looks like it's going to close the game out. Georgec just couldn't get on the board early enough and fast enough.
He was on the board.
Yeah, he couldn't stay on the board.
Yeah, the problem was staying on the board. Yeah. So he was able to get on the board, you know, because Pavel has to originally surrender the board to be able to ramp up in mana.
Yeah.
But then Druid has so many great removal tools that they're able to use that extra mana that they've gained to take back the board while cycling cards, which is what makes them so devastatingly strong.
Yeah. And see the invisible Ragnaros, OP.
Whoa.
That did look like it hit twice, but it in fact only hit once.
Now that's a game-changer card right there. Now we're off to the races. Something interesting could happen this game for sure, and it's going to be interesting how Pavel wants to play it. Looks like he's going off to the races.
Ooh.
So the Ragnaros could end the game, unless he chooses here to swipe it and remove it, which I would like to see from him.
Yeah, you have an 8/8, right?
Yeah,
what's
you
the
set up
problem?
lethal either way.
And
so
you've seen a deadly shot, so it's going to be fine regardless.
Yeah, and you have the 1/1. It's 50-50 on the deadly shot. So yeah, I really like removing it from Pavel's side. He needs Call of the Wild now to really stay in it for Georgec, and Invisible Call of the Wild would be just a clutch pickup.
Yeah, although can you attack the Misha if it's invisible?
Quick shot into
something.
Misha keeps him alive. Okay, and if he just has a few more turns to get there, and this is where you can see the Innervate hero power from Pavel really paying off. 5 turns in advance, he innervated hero power and has hero powered every turn since, and it's making a very dramatic difference.
Yeah, I imagine we're just going to see hero power pass here, as there's not many just 1 cards. It would literally need to be quick shot into, I don't know what, because he doesn't even have Animal Companion left for another Misha at this point.
Bow would be pretty good. Quick shot into bow.
That would work. Ardent Squire is not good though, and that is going to be game. Pavel is 1-0 ahead with a very confident first game for him. So off to a great start. Must feel fantastic, because this is the game where if you win, you go into the finals to have to win 1 more series to book a spot in BlizzCon.
Yeah, it's do or die. Single elimination, you got to win it all. So both players, really gunning for it. Pavel looking for redemption from his 2015 run where he got so close to making it but just didn't quite make it to BlizzCon, looking to capitalize on it this time. And Georgec, just a few weeks ago was 1 game away from making it to BlizzCon, so he also looking to try and book his ticket there finally. So a lot on the line for these players. Yeah,
and Georgec just even just repeat performances, spring and summer back-to-back, getting into the top 8, which is an incredible feat as it is. And then on top of that, obviously those finishes help boost him into the top 8 points earners of the year so far, which is why he's here in this tournament and so far doing pretty well, except in this series where he's at 0-1 down. And it is only game 1. This is best of 7, of course, so there's a long way to go yet. It's not like he's down and out already, but that was a pretty rough loss in the fact that it was just felt so one-sided from early on.
Sometimes Druid gets those kind of hands where you can't really do much about it, but Georgec, he fought back. He had some really cool plays. I really liked the play where he popped the infested wolf and then Houndmastered after the fact to play around, swipe plus wrath plus hero power. That was a pretty good play. So You know, he's on his game. He's on point. He's fired up. His hair looks great. He's ready to go.
Yeah, and we are getting into the second game of this series. Pavel versus Georgec. Pavel is 1-0 up. It's going to be Pavel on the Tempo Mage versus Georgec's Shaman, which is the mid-range variant because no one plays aggro anymore.
Yeah, the Rock Blighter's gone, and so is the aggro. But Tempo Mage, not a deck we've seen too much in the tournament thus far, and quite an interesting deck.
Yeah, especially there's a few ways this can be built as well. We saw, you know, the power of the Kabbalist Tome list when Toktepi recently won with that, but Pavel's actually gone for a different variant. He's gone for the 2 summoners as well, which is
he's
interesting.
gone the full tempo. He's not even, he doesn't have as much value in it as much so as he has minions. Like a lot of tempo mages cut water elemental and they run, you know, either 1 or 0 faceless summoners. He's got double water elemental, double faceless summoner. He's looking to just play minions on curve and smack people in the face. It's a very aggressive sort of approach to tempo mage, and even tops it off with a Ragnaros at the top end.
Yeah, just taking a large selection of really solid minions. Like it continues to surprise me when I see some tempo mage lists where water elemental doesn't make the cut, because I feel like just the card itself is just so powerful in general, especially with how dominant weapon classes are at the moment. You can just lock weapon classes out pretty hard with that card. But
Shaman is a weapon class that's very, very popular. All 8 players playing it.
I've heard that is a popular class.
Is very popular in the tournament as well, and even Rogue on the rise of popularity. So yeah, a lot of the classes people bringing have weapons, and it's a pretty good call.
You run into the Pirate Warrior sometimes.
Even Pirate Warrior. So a pretty aggressive approach here by Pavel, coining out the summoner here. It's a risk. Like a lot of times you can get blown out of the water by even just a totem golem buffing the tunnel trog to be able to trade up, and he's rewarded for this risk. You saw him debating it. Well. You know, he's thinking about potentially holding back on it, but does end up going for it, and it's absolutely huge here. And now he's going to be able to develop the Cult Sorcerer and maybe even Arcane Missiles down the opponent's minion if he wants to.
Yeah, I like it because if you get the missiles and kill off the Thanos, it means the Sorceress is just slightly more safe, which means your next turn, no matter what your opponent plays, you're going to Flame Waker and just do like ridiculous things with the Arcane Blast and just get so much more value combined with the spell power as well. And just set up a really strong board that Georgec is probably going to struggle to deal with.
Yeah, and I like getting the Cult Sorcerer on the field, especially since it's unlikely for your opponent to have Maelstrom Portal at this point, because they did just kind of drop the Thalnos out there. The one thing you really got to worry about is Storm. Tempo Mage not really minion dense a lot of the times, and you know, even though Pavel's version is a little bit more minion dense than other versions, still getting blown out by a Storm here can be really detrimental to your progress forward in the match if you just top deck spells. And wow, all 4 missiles went to the face there, and now he's forced to, you know, kind of waste resources here. He has to use the Arcane Blast to try and protect his Sorcerer's Apprentice.
That was so unlikely to happen. Those missiles just wanted to go face and go aggressive. They should have been in a Hunter deck, in my opinion, but it's not completely terrible for Pavel. He did have the backup option. It wasn't great that he had to use it, of course. He would have much preferred to use it with the Flame Waker next turn, or even just later on in general, so you normally get the spell power value, but having the backup mean he could still clear the board.
Yeah, I mean, imagine in a world where he didn't have to use it. He'd just play Flame Waker here and then Arcane Blast the Totem Golem off.
He would just win.
Yeah, but still, you know, the backup plan, not too bad. Arcane Intellect coming off the top to kind of fill out his curve here. He's still got the Frostbolt to be able to clear the Totem Golem if he wants. He could potentially save the Frostbolt for face damage, but I like just using it here to fill out the curve and, you know, being able to fill in Arcane Blast with the Flame Waker just in case your Sorcerer's Apprentice dies and you kind of clunks up your turn for the next one.
Yeah, I agree. The flexibility of the Arcane Blast feels better to save, especially because even if there's not a great target for it next turn, the power of that combined with any spell damage minion is huge. You just 1 mana deal 4 damage is incredible.
It's such a good tempo swing, and you know, tempo swings pretty good in Tempo Mage.
Yeah, that seems correct. So this is an interesting one here. I just Frostbolt is kind of it can be kind of great later on, maybe even to stall out the Spirit Claws, but this just feels too clean. And you know, Pavel did end up going for it, and I like that he's taking his time. There's no rush apart from the turn timer in general, which you know everyone's used to, but there's no rush to, you know, really go out for a quick play. Just can fully think about every single turn as we said. You know, if you win this game, you win this match. Sorry, you go on to the finals, which is huge.
Yeah, Tempo Mage, such a great deck for right now. Like, so many players are teching in Harrison Jones in all of their decks to kind of help deal with Shaman. You know, they have it in the Druids, they have it in their own Shamans, and you know, a lot of decks are getting kind of greedier to deal with the greed of the Warriors. A lot of people are playing Hunter, and Tempo Mage kind of just really punishes people that are a little too greedy, especially aggressive variants of the Tempo Mage, and that's what we're seeing happen right now as
yeah, and look
Pavel
at this.
able
I
to
love
just
it.
do so much damage.
This is the power of Flame Waker when you can weave in some spells. And this Apprentice, MVP, been on the board forever. And this is just game over for Georgec because we can see that maybe not next turn, but at worst the turn after, he can just Violence Portal straight through the Shaman's face. And then, yeah, there we go. There's this self-lightning bolt. This is a common theme with Georgec. He pinged his own face in a Freeze Mage game earlier on today just to end that match he knows was going to lose. So that was quick.
Yeah, that was really quick. And, you know, Tempo Mage can do that sometimes. We didn't even see a busted Tempo Mage start. Like, you talk about crazy Tempo Mage starts, you're like, Mana Worm, coin Mana Worm into stuff. But, you know, this start for Pavel was just good enough to take it just because Georgec's Shaman deck is, like most of the other Shaman decks, not teched to deal with Tempo Mage. I don't think anybody really expected Tempo Mage. Pavel, I think, is the only guy bringing Tempo Mage, and it's caught everybody off guard so far, just sneaking wins in there against all the greedy decks.
I think the importance as well is Georgec didn't have access to a Claws or a Lightning Bolt early on, because if that Apprentice died, then the whole game would have looked a lot slower, because he wouldn't have been able to do the missiles and the blast for 0 mana that turn that really helped him just clear out the board and then continue to build on that. So getting the Apprentice down in that very aggressive way, because he coined it out as well.
Yeah, it's a big risk.
Which, yeah, but it paid off.
Yeah, you can see what happens when it works out. When it doesn't work out, it's a different story. But when it works out, holy smokes, does it work out.
Yeah, and there's going to be no messing about here. We're going straight into Game 3. Pavel going for his Shaman now, and Georgec on his Freeze Mage. So a matchup that's, you know, as the guys did a great explanation of earlier on, Salt and Savitz, with this matchup has flipped to a certain extent, and it used to be terrible for the Mage because of mainly everyone was playing aggro Shaman, and you was used Doomhammer to great effect to just pile on so much damage. But now it's much more manageable and kind of Georgec's speciality deck to a large extent. So going on to a comfort pick, and I think he's going to be feeling pretty good about the way this one's going to go.
Yeah, definitely in Georgec's favor now because of the loss of things like Doomhammer from the Shaman deck. But the Shaman decks have had the addition of Ragnaros to try and salvage this matchup a little bit, and we haven't seen any of the Shamans really been able to use it to their full extent. And
it's because they've not been balancing it out.
Yeah, they
That's the trick.
That's the trick. So the Shamans have just felt like too slow to be able to finish the game. They just don't quite get the board built up and able to connect enough damage fast enough. So it's typically going to go in the favor of the Freeze Mage player. But every now and again, Shaman's able to sneak a win out just because.
Just because.
It's Shaman, man. They're able to do incredible things.
When you're on the desk with me, Firebat.
Yeah, Shaman, yeah.
Shaman.
Yeah, Shaman.
Okay, well, looking at Georgec's hand, we'll get there one day. Looking at Georgec's hand, it is quite well-rounded, I would say, as well. There's a lot of burn/removal he can use. He does have the Blizzard for a little bit later on, and now a Frost Nova as well, combined with the card draw potential from the Acolyte as well. So pretty well-rounded, not really missing out on too much. Does have the Ice Barrier to stall for the secret later on. So
talking about well-rounded hands, though, Pavel's able to go Totem Golem into Mana Tide Totem, and
it's pretty good curve.
That's about as much heat as you can possibly put on as the mid-range Shaman in the early game. So doing a really good job at pressuring while also refilling his hand and getting close to that Ragnaros. You're expecting Mana Tide to continue drawing cards. Azure Drake's going to cycle a card. You're just increasing the percent chance that you have that Ragnaros on 8, and when you drop Ragnaros on 8. You got a pretty good shot at actually winning the match.
Yeah, and here's my key question.
Okay.
Is this Mana Tide worth a Frostbolt this turn? Because it's such a difficult... We've discussed Mana Tide at length today, and on one hand you have Totem Golem, that's going to keep whacking you in the face for 3, but on the other hand you have a 0/3 minion that it feels awkward to kill because it's not directly damaging you, but it is killing you to a certain extent of just really ramping up the card draw.
I think it is not worth killing. I think it's important to ignore. I think you want to be doing your own game plan as the Freeze Mage. If you're able to line up your freezes, 1 rag shot or even 2 rag shots probably won't even matter if your card draw is able to go as fluidly as, Freeze Mage anticipates their card draw to be able to go. So I think it's very important just to stick to your game plan, and if you can execute your game plan first, you're going to win. So I don't think you even need to respect the Shaman player's game plan very much at all.
Cool, so looks like Pavel is going to clear up the Acolyte. No need to give the Freeze Mage an additional card draw at all, especially he's going to continue to cash in on that Mana Tide totem and just get the Drake down as well. The fortunate thing for Pavel to a certain extent is double Lightning Storm in hand. They would probably like to be at the bottom of the deck if he could choose.
For sure.
And they could be any other 2 cards in the deck as well. But it's not doing too bad so far. He does have the Thunder Bluff as well for a little bit later on when he's built up more of a board and that instant pressure and instant damage, more importantly.
So Georgec doesn't have very great options in his hand. You can think about Frost Nova, but I really don't like Frost Novaing. You know, generally the rule is like anything under about 8 damage isn't worth Frost Novaing. So I'd kind of like to see him just maybe go for the Novice Engineer and the Barrier. You can think about kind of using some of your burn on potentially removing maybe that Totem Golem and maybe go with like the Roaring Torch plus the Novice Engineer.
Yeah, I think what we're pretty sure of is we're not going to see the Tempo Kobold play. It's not going to be too good against this board, at least. It's going to cycle, though.
Sure.
Forgotten Torch going to clear up the Totem Golem here. Nothing too flashy, but it's going to help George get towards the card draw he really needs and get the job done in the long run.
Yeah, and I expect, Pavel's just going to be trying to push as much damage as fast as possible. So we do see the Flame Tongue come out, and I'd likely we're going to see the Spirit Claws come out and just ignore the Novice Engineer and just everything swing right at the dome.
Yeah, this is going to be a hell of a lot of damage coming up. Spirit Claws and the 3 duration, or durability, should I say, on the Spirit Claws is like so crazy. The trade. Yeah. What is he afraid of with the
Blizzard
the 1 damage?
Plus trade in can kill your Mana Tide or your Flame Tongue Totem, so I guess that's some sort of concern. But 3 damage is a lot of damage against Freeze Mage.
Yeah, but yeah, as I was saying, the durability on the Spirit Claws is huge. Like 3 is actually such a big number when it can effectively be a 3-swing Fairy War Axe when you've got this kind of guaranteed spell power that Pavel has.
For sure, for sure. The only distinction is the time, because if the Freeze Mage is able to get an Ice Block down, and then you don't pop the Ice Block, and they Alexstrasza you,
you're dead.
You're dead. Yeah, so you're really on a race against the clock, and you're really hoping that Alexstrasza and those Ice Blocks are real buried deep in their deck, and they're unable to kind of make that happen. And for Georgec at the moment, that kind of is the case. He's looking at, possibly having to, if he wants to continue cycling, go with like Loot Hoarder Frost Nova, or if he doesn't want to go continue cycling and just get the freeze out, he could go with the clunkier freeze and just drop a Blizzard here. But either way, it's nothing too pretty this turn, and I lean more towards just the Blizzard, but I could understand also going for some other line of play.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
Not even going for a freeze on the board. No, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Just it reduces the damage down by 4 anyway.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't have minded the Blizzard purely because the way I approach his Blizzard is like super awkward to get off on a good turn. So if you just Blizzard on 6, fine, and then that opens up the Frost Nova later on to squeeze in more impactful turns.
The issue with Georgec's play here is he left all these totems out on the field going into the turn 7 from Pavel. Perfect turn for him to actually get value out of Thunderbluff Valiant and actually push damage with it. So that could end up kind of hurting him as he is getting towards a really low life total. And now you got to start worrying about, is Rag just going to snipe me and kill me? Like, that's a real thing that can start happening. And you got to worry about lightning bolts as well with double spell power present on the board. If you're not actually clearing the board and you're just freezing it, 5 damage lightning bolts, nothing to joke about. Double lightning bolt plus the Spirit Claws would be lethal.
Yeah, and the fear of this kind of damage coming out from nowhere is actually very real, purely because that Mana Tide has been on the board forever.
That's drawn a lot of cards.
Your opponent's been drawing 2 cards a turn. That's just unfair.
Yeah, it's looking real shaky for Georgec. He's not at the prettiest of life totals. Typically speaking, you want to be a little bit higher. You never want to get yourself around that 8 life. That's the scary part. So trying to minimize the amount of damage prior to this to try and make sure you stay at around, like 18-ish is usually pretty good, so they can't just poke you with
the problem is now, Georgec's kind of like weighing up Blizzard, but he could have just done that last turn, and then he would have had way more options, or at least more options this turn to work in with a Frost Nova, a second Blizzard even. And yeah, he's been pushed into the Blizzard slightly off curve, and whenever the Freeze Mage can't utilize the whole turn's worth of mana, you're in a bad spot, because you really need to use everything you've got to be able to put together that very specific win condition.
Yeah, it is usually pretty rare that Freeze Mage has to hang a mana. Typically speaking, they plan all their turns out in advance to try and make sure they never hang a mana.
You even see stuff like Coin Ping just to fill out the curve,
every time, usually Freeze Mage. And there's that Ragnaros finally found for Pavel. And he has Georgec in a position where he can, pop the block directly out of hand.
And when you draw a million cards a turn, it was only a matter of time to see Ragnaros.
Yeah, and it comes down to that taking extra 4 damage for George C here, and that's what's going to allow the Ragnaros to be able to get the guaranteed pop. So he's going to go Blizzard and maybe a Loot Hoarder on top of it. He might even think about, Frostbolting the face to stop the Spirit Claws damage coming in. But Lightning Bolt plus Ragnaros is going to end him.
Yeah, this is where Freeze Mage gets extremely difficult to play, and why it's such a sort of high skill cap deck, is that at this point George C will be thinking exactly what do I need to do and what needs to happen for me to win this game, because I'm in such a rough position. And George C's proven in the past that he can actually identify those outs very quickly and build his whole game plan around it. But we can see that there's potentially just all the damage in the world available here. It's going to be a guaranteed proc because he can kill off the Loot Hoarder with the Spirit Claws and with Rag on the board. Plus, the board's full as well. The Thunderbluff's still there to buff the totems.
Now, imagine George C's 4 health higher here, and the Ice Block doesn't get popped.
And the Rag hits the Loot Hoarder.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Rag hits him in the face, or the Rag hits the 50-50 for the Loot Hoarder. And if it hits the 50-50 for the Loot Hoarder, and George C's Ice Block doesn't get popped, and he top decks Alexstrasza here, then he has a reasonable chance, and then he would just win the game. So halfway through his deck had about 50% chance to find the Alexstrasza by that point. So.
Yep, and there it is. It's going to be Pavel going up 3-0. Incredible performance so far, and like I said, he's just got to get 1 win with Rogue against any of George C's classes to take this out and move on to the grand finals to face RDU.
Yeah, and typically speaking, Rogue's pretty okay against Druid. Not anything special, but like okay. And it's all right against Hunter. Maybe a little bit better than all right, slightly favored, if you will. And then it's maybe slightly favored against Shaman as well. A little less favored than it is against Hunter, and then just atrocious against Freeze Mage, though. But it's got a few good matchups in the midst, and we're gonna start off with the one bad matchup for Rogue. So most likely Pavel not gonna be taking this one, and George C will kind of get himself on the board and start trying to get back on the reverse sweep train. But hopefully Pavel doesn't get too shooken up by it, realize it's a bad matchup, maybe takes a little bit of extra risks since it's a bad matchup. And
don't be so negative, Firebat. The game's not over yet. It's only just started. Come on.
You have to have that sort of mindset when you get into a bad matchup. It's like, I need to take a little bit of extra risks. I know that the win rates in this matchup are like 70-30 in favor of the Freeze Mage. If I have the ability to make a big Edwin and YOLO it, let's YOLO it. Let's go ham.
Yeah, I completely agree. And talking of risk, Servant of Yogg-Saron is in hand, and you know what? The only time I've ever played that card, it's Starfalled itself. So I paid 5 mana to pass a turn, and it felt very bad. So I've never touched that card since, but we'll see if Pavel has a little bit better luck. It can do incredible things, to be fair, so it could be a huge impact. And as you said, maybe not a decided risk by Pavel to getting this card, of course. He did get it from the Swashbuckler. But this could be this could be something that can actually get him ahead somehow. So we'll see how it pans out. George C just doing the usual Freeze Mage things of playing Acolyte and drawing cards.
So, yeah, maybe you just save it for Flare. Can it cast Flare?
No, it's 5 mana.
Oh, only 5 mana spells. I don't even know the card.
Yeah, don't play it. I don't recommend it. I've not had a good win rate with that card of my 1 game, 1 loss.
Sure. So maybe it gets a Nourish, though. Just ramps you up in mana. Just takes the game by storm. You just turn into that Rogue Druid hybrid.
I hope he just slams it on 5.
I hope
just
so.
to be like, you know what? I've got it. Let's see what you can do. He has a lot of games to be able to take 1 win. Oh, it's 5 or less.
I told you. I knew what I was talking about.
Dude, no, don't give me that.
Come
right.
on,
You had no clue.
I knew
You had
what
no
I was
clue. The second
about.
I said it's 5 mana, you just believed me.
Well,
so.
because I don't want to make you look bad.
Guys,
I'm a nice guy.
Guys at home, don't listen to Firebat.
I'm a nice guy.
He acts like he knows what he's talking about, but it's all a facade.
He's going to cast Flare with that later on in the match. That's going to happen now.
We'll see.
The caster curse exists, man. I've said it's going to happen, and now it will. So I'm excited for that.
Okay, well, now I've shown off my lack of knowledge of certain cards. Like I said, I played it once and was done, so that's my excuse. George C is... What does he have available?
He's got the ability to play, one of these ice blocks out. You kind of have to get it out at some point. And then he can also, behind this, just play a Doomsayer and stall for a turn, or play a Novice Engineer to begin cycling.
What spell could he use from Yogg minion of Yogg-Saron? Servant, sorry, to clear the Doomsayer. Got to think of these options.
Shadow Word Pain, for example. But, typically speaking, the reason why they're playing the Doomsayer on an empty board is so great for the Freeze Mage player against Rogue is because Rogue has this wonderful card called Sap that's able to, deal with Doomsayers quite effectively in the middle of your turn when you're trying to set it up to remove minions. So oftentimes the best state to really play it in is just by itself, so it actually buys a turn instead of just getting sapped.
Yep. Not often you see the Frost Nova Doomsayer combo actually go off against in this Rogue, matchup at all, and both players now have quite the selection of cards. Emperor Thaurissan is an option, but it would only be hitting Sinister Strike. That's a lot of relevance, because this Rogue deck is a Malygos Rogue, of course. So you really want to hit at least one Sinister Strike, maybe an Eviscerate as well, to get those big burst turns down.
Yeah, Pavel had the opportunity there to go off with the Gadgets and Auctioneer if he wanted to. He had Coin, he had Prep, he had Sinister Strike, and he could make something happen there. But I really, really like the patience by him here. Just developing the Tomb Pillager out with the SI this turn, fills out the mana curve, and enables to get him another coin for Gadgets and Auctioneer. He knows he has plenty of time in this matchup. Not a huge amount of time, as it starts approaching, turns 9 and 10 in the mana curve. But he definitely has at least one more turn that he can buy to get a coin. He doesn't have to worry about just overarching board state pressure.
Yeah, and something to just note as well, going back to the Rogue deck that Pavel is using, is because of the Malygos, it wouldn't be exactly the same way that Druid uses it, because Druid has a lot of additional health gain. But if Pavel just isn't pressured enough early, he can actually just drop Malygos on the turn. And he doesn't have to kill him. He can just drop it, maybe proc a block, and not worry about Malygos dying, because Freeze Mage just doesn't deal with high health minions very well, hence why Ragnaros is so powerful also.
Yeah, exactly. What will George would have to double fireball it?
Yeah, which then you just kind of lose anyway.
How do you win the game then? It's so much harder to collect all the burn necessary to kind of finish out the game. So the prep, not able to find anything worth prepping. He could prep the Sinister Strike. Oh, he's going to go for it. This likely indicates that he wants to just be dropping Malygos next turn, like you had said.
Yeah, and he's gone straight into the second Sinister Strike as well. So even though he used one, he has another one available, so that's definitely nice for Pavel. He's got so much burst, and you know what? George C, for a Freeze Mage, is relatively low on cards at this point, so it's not like he's close to piecing together the Alexstrasza into finishing combo.
So much burn.
Yeah, well, he has the damage aspect, but no Alexstrasza, and also it's at least an additional turn till Alexstrasza is going to come down anyway.
Yeah, and he's got Blizzard, and he's got Frostbolt if he wants it, or the Ice Lance if he wants it, to maybe try and clean up Gadgets and Auctioneer. Or he could potentially even just ignore the Gadgets and Auctioneer and let the Rogue have cards.
Yeah, do you think you just need Ice Lance to combine it with Frostbolt to actually kill your opponent if you survive that long? Are you going to...
It is a nice option to have. At the moment, the way George's hand is looking is if he's able to find Emperor Thaurissan or if he's able to find Alexstrasza, he wins the game. So he's doubling his outs for ways that he can kind of piece together the damage to burst down his opponent. Because if you count it all up, he's getting pretty close there with the amount of damage he has in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, for 10 mana, he has the damage, right?
Yeah.
To kill him from Alexstrasza. So he does have it available. But this is the turn I half mentioned earlier where Malygos is just playable versus Mage. Versus Freeze Mage at least, there's no real punish. You're going to get the spell power, and now we're just going to see how much value Pavel's going to get out of this guy. Just have Sinister Strike available, but nothing else. Oh, hang on a minute. The Servant of Yogg.
Yeah, the Servant of Yogg-Saron could cast a spell on the
Fireball Face.
Could Fireball Face for 11 damage. So
it could also polymorph his Malygos.
It could also polymorph his Malygos. There's a lot of variables at work there. So some good, some bad.
Big Van Cleef.
Yeah, the 1/1, just massive.
Yeah, this is when you wish you were in Shadow Step.
I'm digging the sap to just get rid of the Accolade of Pain without giving your opponents additional cards, because it's kind of a race against the clock now, because if your opponent's able to play Alexstrasza on you before you pop the block, you're dead.
In trouble. Yeah,
but if you're able to pop the block before they can play Alexstrasza, you win. And George C doesn't have Alexstrasza because he would have just played Alexstrasza last turn and then killed you if he had it. So he's missing some of the pieces to the puzzle still, and you want to try and keep him away from finding them. Yeah,
and just getting the Sinister Strike in there for Pavel, because why not? So it can only go face. It's always going face, and you have Malygos on board, as well as the Thanos for an extra +1. So George C's going to cycle and try and just do something to deal with this board, because now even just the minion pressure is actually pretty heavy. Even though it doesn't look too big on the board itself, there's what?
Emperor Thorsan isn't a terrible
available.
pickup. If he's able to get an Emperor Thorsan and the Emperor Thorsan proc here isn't bad. It's just not fantastic.
Yeah.
He's reducing a lot of the card draw cards so to be able to more fluidly cycle cards. He also reduces a bunch of cards for the Kobold Geomancer. So our evolved Kobold. So
come on, I thought you knew the cards, Fiber.
Oh, okay.
I thought you knew all the cards. Come on.
So if he were to get all of these spells discounted, it would be 3, 4, 5, 6 mana to play it. So he could play all of these spells with the evolved Kobold if he wanted to.
Yeah, he's just going to go for the torch, start doing the damage. He realizes he does not have the time to try and cycle into Alexstrasza. The block is getting procced next turn.
Yeah, and he doesn't have enough damage quite yet.
It's his assumption anyway. Yeah.
He has 13 damage in hand. If he's able to pick up the evolved Kobold, he can't actually play all of it with it unless he gets an Emperor discount. So he could go Emperor and Ice Block after his block gets popped, getting an Emperor discount, and then being able to play everything with the evolved Kobold. Currently, 13 damage. Evolved Kobold would be the same thing as drawing another Fireball, so it only adds, it's 6 damage to the midst there and bring him up to 19. So the max he can get off of one draw is 19, so he needs to have it like a 2-card combo of things coming together here.
Pyroblast.
Well, there's the evolved Kobold, so if he's able to find another Fireball, he can make something happen.
What?
Double Servant of Yogg-Saron.
Play them both, Pavel, next turn. That's what you got to do to win this game, is he actually can't proc the block this turn.
Yeah,
which is huge. And Georgec deciding to go aggressive, and he's going to be rewarded as it's going to buy himself enough time to try and make the play to win this game.
Yeah, he's going to be able to cycle more cards and then get the Emperor discount and put up the second Ice Block and then try and go for a big OTK finish.
Yeah, and Georgec knows that there's no spells in Pavel's hand that can do any damage because they just would have been used to proc the block, so he knows. So suddenly, Frost Nova is actually a good play to stop the minion damage, and he might survive another turn without proccing the block, which is massive.
Yeah, first off, definitely start with the Acolyte of Pain plus the ping. Try and see if you can string something together here and just do all of the card draw possible this turn. And if you're able to get another burn spell, then you've really locked things up for yourself there.
Yeah, so much damage available because of that Evolved Kobold, giving +2 spell damage. It's kind of huge. Makes this mage list particularly scary.
So he needs either an Ice Lance, a Frostbolt, a Fireball, a Roaring Torch, or a Forgotten Torch here.
Ice Lance.
Ice Lance, that'll do it. So Georgec now, if you count up the damage in his hand, that's an additional 6. So he's got...
The Abyss coming just too late.
17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 damage in the hand of Georgec after the Emperor discount. So, we talked about how this is kind of a bad matchup and he might need to take some risks. And maybe, for Pavel, if he was
more willing to play the Servant.
More willing to play the Servant. If he played the Servant the previous turn and the Servant got a spell that with the Malagos buff popped the block, that would have been 1 turn faster.
Yep.
And that could have actually been the turn he needed to win the game. What are the odds that he pops the block compared to what are the odds that Georgec finds the burn? The odds that Georgec finds the burn, pretty high, honestly, at this point. So I think it might have been a risk that would be worth taking. So now Georgec just plays Emperor Thorsan plus Ice Block and then has lethal the following turn.
Yeah, and there's not a lot Pavel can do about it. But he's got 2 chances at Flare.
He does have 2 chances at Flare.
And that's pretty much what you do, right? That's pretty much the play.
It can still happen. The double chances at
Oh
Flare.
my god. Fiber, if this happens, I believe you've got some kind of weird power. Even more so than the general caster curse.
Okay.
Because this would be incredible.
It would be definitely absolutely insane, and that would be a blowout way to finish the series with some Servant of Yogg-Saron in Rogue getting Flare.
Yeah, they're angry because the boss got nerfed.
You got to go for it.
Let's see. This is tense.
This is tense.
Go for it, Pavel. Pray.
Now, if he pops the block first, he can't get Flare. He needs to play the Servant of Yogg-Saron first in order to get a chance at Flare. Maybe he doesn't think he's dead.
Yeah, he just that's the presumption that he's fine. And there's nothing Or he could heal with Servant of Yogg-Saron. Healing Touch, Holy Light, for example.
Yeah.
Please play.
Oh, he's going for it. Okay. He's going for it. If he gets Flare now, though, now it'll look embarrassing. But limiting the amount of targets on the field with the backstab there to increase the odds that he heals himself is what he's going for with this line of play by removing the minions there.
Here we go, second one. Mind Vision not going to be enough. Alex Straza not going to help him this time. And Georgec, it looks like he's pieced together a win in what appeared to be a very, very unfortunate position early on with that Malygos coming down for so long.
Yeah, Pavel just wasn't able to string together any spells and wasn't able to get the job done. Wasn't willing to take the risk of the Servant of Yogs. He felt like he was in a far enough ahead position that he didn't have to take that risk, and kind of misjudged the situation there as Georgec was able to string together a way to close out this game.
Georgec did just manage to get a win on the board there, as Pavel is 3-1 up currently, and still got his rogue to play, his Malygos rogue that he was so close with in the last game, but he's going to be versus Georgec's Hunter, Shaman, and Druid, and only has to get a win versus one of them, so Georgec has got the Freeze Mage out of the way, but now he's just got to pick any other deck because he's got to win with all of them versus this rogue, and we're going straight into it. Of course, Pavel and the rogue. Georgec has chosen the Shaman for this particular game.
Yeah, Shaman, probably his best chance of the remaining decks up against this rogue deck, so he's just kind of taking the deck he feels has got the highest chance of winning and trying to start this reverse sweep.
Yeah, and how do you feel this matchup really goes? Do you think the rogue's actually got a really good one here?
I think the rogue has a really decent chance. It comes down to if you get Tomb Pillager on 4 and if it gets hexed or not a lot of times. Just having the coin to be able to work with your gadgets and Auctioneer and work with your spell power turns and stuff like that is just so crucial. So if the Tomb Pillager comes down on 4 and is able to transfer itself into a coin, then the rogue player usually wins from that position. But if there's no Tomb Pillager on turn 4 or the Tomb Pillager gets hexed and there is no coin gain from it, a lot of the times that's enough time, just the rogue being half a turn behind by not having that coin is enough time for the Shaman to really establish a board that starts becoming too much for the rogue to handle, because rogue has some AoE in the form of Fan of Knives, but it's not like before. It's not like before with Blade Flurry. So if the Shaman can just, stomp enough things onto the board and start getting those big thing from below swing turns, they can actually snowball the board enough so that Rogue just can't catch up. Yeah,
and something you touched on there was a play I actually really like, and I believe is just the common go-to, is the Hex onto the Tomb Pillager to just deny the coin. It's literally, if you have Hex and they play Tomb Pillager, your turn is played for you. You just aim that straight at the Tomb Pillager no matter what.
It's a really important turn. It's just the rogue deck relies so heavily on the coin to keep up in pace with the Shaman deck, because Shaman for the most part just has superior card quality to the rogue, but them getting the ability to get an extra card out of the coin with the gadgets and Auctioneer, and also gain a little bit of extra tempo out of it to make up for the fact that they're investing in a gadgets and Auctioneer, oftentimes is what allows the rogue to kind of keep on par with the Shaman tempo.
Yeah, and this is not a bad plan B to just spell power lightning bolt the Tomb Pillager as well. It does give your opponent the coin, but this allows him to develop a totem golem behind that, and only overloading for 2 for the following turn means he can follow up with the Horse Rider as well if needed. And this board is actually getting pretty wide and pretty scary for Pavel. Actually, he needs to really rush down an option to be able to deal with at least a few of these minions, or he'll just take too much damage.
Wow, we see him aggressively going with the gadgets and Auctioneer here. Would have thought maybe he would go for some sort of Shiv Shadow Strike play and maybe just kind of wait on it one turn so he would get to be able to cycle the coin as well. But he feels the pressure of these tunnel trucks, feels like he needs to react immediately and just start drawing cards there. So
yeah, and double prep allowed him to do that, right? I think if he only had one prep, it wouldn't have been enough.
Every time, So gets in there, gets cycling, and has a lot of decent follow-up to this. A lot of fuel in the tank, but not a lot of removal remaining. So he goes with the Shiv instead of the Sap, probably waited on that decision of the fact that he's just looking for more spells, more removal to weave in with the development of minions.
Look how minion-heavy the Rogue hand is. It's just all the minions he could want, but definitely needing to get some good use out of that Sap to be able to really get ahead on the board again. And Feral Spirit is a great card. They're going to continue to be wide on the board and buff the Tunnel Trog for an easy kill on the gadgets, I'm sorry.
And this Emperor Thorstein, he kind of set up for this the previous turn, right? Like, he coined the gadgets and Auctioneer and then drew a bunch of cards so his hand would be super wide for the Emperor Thorstein to get a ton of value so that he can try and keep up with the Shaman that way. And it looked like it's paying off for him. That Emperor Thorstein hit 7 cards, and it's going to be really tough for Georgec to keep up with, as he doesn't have great answer for this Emperor Thorstein either. It's still a 5/5 body that he's got to figure out. what does he want to do with?
Yeah, and with that amount of cards being hit, and one of them being Van Cleef as well.
Yeah.
2 mana Van Cleef is awesome.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you can actually just make a huge Van Cleef the following turn, as well as developing more minions, which is sometimes the problem. If you go big on a Van Cleef, it's normally just the Van Cleef, so then if a Hex comes out, it just hard shuts it down. But being able to play even more minions, Backstab, another great card to be able to start comboing out this turn with. And on the other hand, though, Pavel is on 10 health.
Yeah,
which is definitely something to consider.
Taking some damage because George C went with the aggressive line. He's like, all right, Pavel's drawn way too many cards with his Auctioneer double prep. I can't keep up with the amount of value he has. So shifting gears here. Let's hit him in the face, and hopefully we can make it there in time. And at the moment, you know, the amount of removal that Pavel has discounted, it's going to be very tough for George C to really race him down. And you can see Pavel realizing that this is what George C's game plan was, kind of shifting gears away from the Edwin Van Cleef, going for the pure removal strategy, just trying to avoid any additional face damage whatsoever, so he can kind of stay outside the range of just kind of getting cheesed out of this game. And I really like that line of play. I think it's a really smart way to adjust to what your opponent's doing.
Yeah, and the slight frustration here for George C is that the thing from below, which is so commonly played for 0 or 1 mana, it was actually put down for 4, which means that it's sapped back into hand, and now he just doesn't have the time to replay the 4 mana 5/5 taunt. It's just not going to be good enough. Does get the Drake into the Lightning Storm for a... Oh, I was going to say almost guaranteed clear, but that is actually kind of huge. It's just the free trade into the Drake for Pavel if he really wants. Could use Backstab if he feels like it.
Yeah, you're definitely going to be using the Backstab. Charge up this Van Cleef. Look at this, just absolute monster of a power turn. I think you hold on to the SI. Oh my gosh. And we get the...
Backstab him for 1 million.
Yeah, it is interesting. Do you use the Shiv or do you develop the Tomb Pillager? It's actually really close, right? Like a 5/4 for 2 is really good, and dealing 8 damage for 2 is
Shiv
also
face
really good.
Van Cleef.
Yeah.
I like it.
I don't know, actually, if it's better than the Edwin Van Cleef. I mean, better than the Tomb Pillager.
It feels bad by that, and that's
maybe
all that matters.
feels better, but like...
If you can Shiv face for 8, you do it.
Okay, sure.
Tomb Pillager, you can
the
stay
Hex
on the
for George
bench.
C, he can stay in this. He's going to need like a Maelstrom portal top deck after this, but he is able to, you know, clean up a lot of these minions.
And most importantly, Malygos as well. You know, post-Hex, like the Malygos does get dropped as well, so the 2 huge threats on the board getting cleaned up, and the double Swashbuckler.
Oh, that
is a Wind Fury.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 damage.
What? This is twice that's the same card being put out, and that's going to be a double Wind Fury turn, and I'm pretty sure...
It's 1 damage off.
1 damage off.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That was still scary. That's the second time those Swashbucklers have doubled up on the same card, which is kind of ridiculous. Can someone check the card text? Because I'm pretty sure it says a random card every time, not both Swashbucklers are going to pull the same card, and double Wind Fury is kind of nuts.
Thank you.
Oh my god, I need a minute by about talk.
Both Lightning Storms are gone, so I have no idea how George C is going to be able to, you know, clear this board with 1 card off the top. So
He
I think
needs
this
his
is
own
just gonna be
Swashbucklers.
Yeah, he needs a Swashbuckler
And
into
that is going to be
or something.
it. Off the back of double Wind Fury from Swashbucklers, Pavel is going to go into the finals versus RDU in a very convincing 4-1 victory over George C. And that last game, man.
Yeah, that last game, a pretty wild rogue game. Not typically what you see out of it, and you know, getting that coin out so he could get his gadgets out 1 turn earlier, which then allowed him to get his Emperor out 1 turn earlier, and then he was able to fight back 1 turn faster and stabilize at 10 life. Imagine he doesn't get the coin, and now he's at, you know, 4 life or whatever, and suddenly you're just always afraid of dying every turn, and you know, the Argent Horse Rider or whatever could have some choice words to kind of close out that game for him. So it's so important there to just have the Tomb Pillager start off the thing, so that you can say, you know, gadgets and double prep, so OP, you need that, but it's really all of it together is what makes the whole package come together for the Rogue there. But yeah, really well played by Pavel, showing like a great mastery over the Rogue class. Really fun to watch.
Yeah, really strong performance, and he has booked himself into the finals.